We are now recording live. Don't worry about eating. We all have to eat.
We're recording live.
Mm-hmm.
So far.
Welcome to the Bob and Zip Show with Ed Kelly. Our special guest is Chuck Opperman, a former Microsoft, current Malwarebytes. Do I say it right? Malware, or is it malware?
Malwarebytes.
Malwarebytes.
With the bat.
Is it potato or potato? And Charles has a very interesting story, and we're going to talk a little bit about his history and the crossroads we are all at now in technology. Take it away, Dave, with the jingle.
They say that a lie can't go halfway around the world before
the truth gets its pants on.
the Bob and Zip Show with Ed Kelly.
I think it's important to note that we will always have pants on.
Speak for yourself.
Speak for yourself. And we won't be proving it. I guess that's the right way to go. All right, welcome everybody. It's today is Wednesday, the 24th of May, and the Truth Gets Its Pants On podcast welcomes our guest tonight, Charles Opperman. Charles Opperman, at the time I met him, was a pretty big mucky muck. Not the biggest of mucky mucks, but a mucky. He had some muckiness at Microsoft. I believe you wrote some of the code for Windows 95.
Yeah, Windows 95, all the versions of Windows up to XP, and then I left for a bit and came back and worked on Vista and Windows 7.
Wow. So, and some of the most incredible work that has ever been done in IT that literally changed the face of the world, done with his teams and the people at Microsoft. And living in Seattle, of course, I had a side view seat to some of that. And of course, I sat right seat with Chuck as a pilot as he became a mentor to me and helped me learn how to rein in my attention deficit disorder and not kill myself in an airplane.
God help us all.
God, which happens. And then as time went on, even more interesting things happened with Chuck. And we'll delve into a little bit of that. The bottom line is that Chuck is now the subject of a movie screenplay, which is getting some serious attention and being shopped. Well, let's say this. Keith, I asked him what I could say. Something about Sony Pictures and Cannes Film Festival, something about other high-level meetings being taken, and the picture is getting investors. The motion picture involves a time in Chuck's life, which I must mention is fictionalized.
Very.
Very fictionalized. Names, specifics.
At the Cannes Film Festival, we called it bullshit.
Yes, exactly. However, the gist of the story is that in the high-power, high-impact job that he has, as has happened with many people, mentally draining and caused something of a breakdown that led to a very strange set of coincidences. People who know my story know that my airplane back in the year, what year was this, Chuck? 2008.
Let's see. This all happened late November 2008. Yeah.
Okay. My airplane was stolen by a youngster at the time, 17 years old, named Colton Harris Moore, who became legendary on social media, stole many more planes, and eluded authorities all across the country. And
Great
finally,
flyer, bad lander.
No. Would you correct him on that, Chuck?
He knew how to get up into the air. Getting down was definitely the worst part. But as you said earlier, a BSer extraordinaire.
Any landing that you can walk away from? As I thought that's what you were going to say. You don't agree with that.
He walked away from all of them.
Any landing you can walk away from is a good one, some people say. So at this time, Chuck was having some, and you're okay with me talking about this?
Yeah.
Extreme, and by the way, he and I both have, been in 12-step. I've been in a 12-step program, been in recovery, been through all kinds of difficulties. psychotic episodes, all kinds of things. Zip knows a little about this.
Yes, I do.
Zip spent a little time under lock and key.
Yes, I did.
Ed, you're just happily smoking your dope every day and nothing's ever bothered you.
Wake and bake, one toke. Give me a break.
That's right. I know he's a one toker, by the way. We always tease each other. So anyway, at this time, Chuck, at a very low point, considered taking my airplane because he had a key and we were brothers, and getting the insurance money for his family because he was unable to work. What ends up happening is incredible. This media star in social media, Colton Harris Moore, a 17-year-old with a host of problems of his own and difficult upbringing, who had always dreamed of flying, Colton Harris Moore camped outside my hangar, watched my airplane, knew that I wouldn't be using it when I was on the radio, and stole the airplane. The catch to the story is that he stole the airplane at the time that Chuck was going to off himself for insurance money.
Wow.
Yes. So in an extremely amazing coincidence that I feel is the hand of a higher power of some kind.
Divine intervention, yeah.
Divine intervention, I think, that might have saved Chuck's life. The rest of the story we'll get into is that Chuck went on to become an amazing dad, an amazing software developer currently working at Malwarebytes, and an executive and the kindest human being I've ever known.
Takes one to know one. Bob.
As long as I make all the ones I say that about equal. So that's sort of the backstory. And what I thought we would do is play you the film trailer and then get into our topic tonight, which is technology is at a crossroads. Yes, AI is this, it's a news story. It's a kicker. It's a bunch of different stories and narratives right now, which I think are all very speculative. But I thought it would be interesting if the truth got its pants on and we talked about what really might happen for all of us. So here's the movie, the trailer for Flight Plans.
The markets haven't been this volatile in almost 80 years.
Now it's official, we are in a recession.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are all in this room because you are the finest minds in technology. We did it with Vista. We did it with Halo. We did it with the Zune, arguably our finest innovation. And we're going to do it again with the Windows Phone.
Are you ready to soar the skies today?
Does Howard Hughes save his own piss?
You know, when pre-flight checklists were introduced in 1935, they cut pilot error by 65%.
So what pilots do before that?
They crashed.
I am very sorry.
I built this team.
And we're laying off more than half of your department, Charles.
You're gonna run away, and you're gonna take care of everything and everybody you ever loved. Except you won't be there. That's my favorite part.
Microsoft's market cap is at $228 billion. It's not like we're going to have to kill off the Zune to make ends meet.
Bob, where's Chuck?
He's taking my plane. I'll see him this afternoon. Why?
Oh, shit.
I know you're just a voice in my head, but I really need you to shut up just for a minute.
Oh, you want to get rid of me?
If you get hit by a bus before December 31st, you're worth an extra $2 million. Not that it matters, you'd be dead. Sorry, that's not funny, I know.
You've got all that money wrapped up in the Microsoft stock. Doesn't that make you nervous?
You gotta dream big, buddy.
Hurry, little children, run this way. I have got a beast that
Wow, nothing left. The house is gone. The boat, the plane, everything you've ever worked for.
Just give me a minute to think. Why does this have to be the only option?
What do I do? What do I do?
Everything okay down there?
Yep. Just thinking to myself.
Great trailer.
Yes, indeed.
A real shout out to Keith Rivers, who directed that, and of course Ryan Corey, who stars as me and my alter ego me, and Charlie Heaton, who's in there as the Barefoot Bandit. It's just
Good
an
casting,
amazing production crew and a group of really, really talented people, and Steve Stockman, who contributed a lot to the screenplay, co-writer of the screenplay.
Yeah. And of course, the guy who plays Bob Rivers is an African American in this because we needed diversity.
Well, if you needed Morgan Freeman to narrate.
Yes, there could be a role, but then you still have that white face.
That's true, but I can be off camera, Bob.
So, Chuck, by God, given the history we just told, what's that like for you just to watch the trailer?
It's incredible. You know, every time you go to a movie or you see a trailer for a movie and it says based on a true story or inspired by actual events, you know to take it with a grain of salt. And in this case, you know, it is based on, you know, actual events and a true story, but it really just starts at one place and just goes. But along the way, I think Keith and Steve kind of captured some things about me that, you know, that people who have seen the trailer, I know you, Mom, has said, "Oh, that's Chuck." You know, that's what he's like.
Yeah. Oh,
and,
yeah.
You know,
I don't think you were quite that rich, but it is you.
No, I wasn't. And of course,
It is a younger him. Yeah.
I didn't do coke and I didn't dance around on boats with girls and stuff like that. But
We
I
need
knew
that
people
for a
who
movie.
did.
Yeah.
I'd say I knew people who did. But you know, things like, you know, does Howard Hughes save his own piss? You know, that is absolutely a line I would use. I hadn't, but I'm using it now. You know, and you got to dream big, buddy. That's my voice. I mean, maybe I've never said those words in that order, but that is absolutely my voice. And those guys captured it. And it's very humbling. It's very odd. I'm not used to any sort of a spotlight. And to see someone portraying a version of yourself in this way is both exhilarating and deeply unsettling. You know, and I'm also at the point where I'm going, you know, this all happened. All these events that are documented here or inspired by all occurred right before my son was born. And that when I was at a very, very low point, I had shall we say, a break from reality. And my son now, it just came from his 8th grade graduation, and that he's 14 years old and he's nearly as tall as me. And, you know, he's just an amazing kid. And at some point I got to tell him, you know, let's talk about the time right before you were born and that. So this project, he's
are you going to do it on the way to the premiere of the movie, or are you going to do it before that?
Yeah. But you know, one of the things, and you know, I'm going to say it out loud now because I really want Keith to do this. I'm going to apply a little public pressure to him. Is like the you know, the movie is partly about me, partly about the Barefoot Bandit, and partly about, you know, flying, the joy of flying and the exhilaration of it, and why people want to use aviation and flight as a way of kind of escaping their realities in various means. And so Colton Harris is the Barefoot Bandit. He took pictures of himself with bare feet. And I've told Keith that the movie's got to start with Colton's feet, you know, in the woods, barefoot. And it's got to end with my bare feet in the sand here in Florida. You know, to kind of bookend the movie.
Nice bookend.
You know, and also include the feet of my girlfriend and the feet of my son. And it's like, yeah,
it all worked out.
Everything worked out and that. And I think Keith and Steve have come up with this amazing screenplay, this incredible narrative device that allows for a lot of humor, a lot of intrigue, shall we say. And it has a drive to it. It leads to a final act of these forces coming together. And God, it's like I look at that trailer and I go, I want to see this movie.
Yeah. Do you feel? I do. I'll give that up. Do you feel that there's a divine intervention force at play here that caused everything to come to like I do believe that we have free will, but at the same time, the tapestry of life and the stories in real life, forget the dramatization, are so much like a screenplay sometimes, the way different events come together and shape.
Or just like, what's the degree of difference between a perfectly normal life, such as mine, really? I do think of myself as a fairly normal guy in that, and having some happenstance, and it becomes something very dramatic and very interesting. Just change the slight things here and there, and boom, it's fascinating. But I will caution, if you ever go to the movies and it says based on true stories, take that with a big grain of salt. Never had an alter ego.
This is Chuck once again reminding you he didn't party quite like that.
No,
Zip and I might have.
Yes. I knew people. I did know people.
Yeah.
So not only do you have your pilot's license, but you've given someone artistic license as well.
Yes.
That's right. You have to sign away your life rights, right?
Yeah, that's part of it. And actually, Keith, I am waiting for that check to clear. So that's why that financing is so important. But no, regardless of whatever happens to the project, I think they've written a wonderful tale that I personally am proud of to be a part of. I think they've done it with sensitivity. My only request to Keith was that the movie at some point's got to show that I did okay, that Colton got away and he seemingly won. He accomplished his goal at that point, and I didn't accomplish my goal at that point. But the person who lost on screen actually won. And the person who won on screen actually lost. And so that, I think, is one of the more fascinating aspects of the narrative of it all.
Malware bites, but Chuck's life didn't. In the end, it became wonderful.
We need you, Ed, to do the trailer narration. We really
Don't
do.
tell me, tell Keith.
Keith's going to have to subscribe to our Patreon in order to get free first work.
Just 2008, in the middle of a recession.
For $8 a month, I think he can do it. So I'll drop a subtle thing. Yes. Zip.
No, I was just going to ask, in terms of percentage, how much creative license in the trailer did you see from the real story? That's not a fair question, but
it's not. But 75%, fictional.
That's how
I disagree because I do know Chuck. That wild-eyed look. What's the actor's name again?
Ryan Corey. Great actor.
Yeah, I have met him over the years. That wild-eyed look in his eyes that speaks to the passion of going up in an airplane and the excitement that was very real at Microsoft. You got to understand, during that time, Microsoft, right now you've got Google, you've got Facebook, you've got Apple. During that time, Microsoft was the first big tech global monster. And if you even worked at Microsoft, I know Chuck doesn't think of himself as this cool, but I did. If you even worked there, you had this aura of coolness about you. And it sounds a little silly now because it's dated, but they had free food. They had
we were kings.
Pool tables.
We were the center of the computing universe in the 90s. And then absolutely.
It was a company run with passion, unlike any company I had ever. Early radio companies had some passion, and we had show business and we had fun, but Microsoft was changing the whole world from this Redmond campus.
Well, and that's an interesting set of words there, because all of us on the about 300 of us on the Windows 95 team, we all had a poster that was put into our offices that was the blue sky. I might even have one of the boxes behind me here.
From the Windows box, yeah.
And it says, "You are changing the world." That was drilled into us, and we felt it at that point. We did absolutely feel that at the time.
And you did.
I'd like to think so. I think, in particular, one thing that Bob hasn't mentioned is the stuff that I worked on in Windows and at Microsoft was to making our technology useful for people with disabilities. So for people who are blind, hard of hearing, mobility impairments, things like that. I was the person who put a lot of those features into our products. And that's the stuff that when I have passed on, I'd like to be remembered for, because
your
those are the
legacy.
things that are truly important. It's nice to make software that pleases people and gets used in billions of places, but if you can make a few thousand people who are blind be able to keep a job, that to me is my ticket into heaven.
Wow. Yeah.
We're at a crossroads, it feels like, because just as back in that day, Windows 95, the graphic user interface, started by Apple, but really popularized by Microsoft and globalized, changed our world. And then the internet, shortly after, in the early 2000s, became mainstream. I remember in the beginning of the internet, there was a search engine called Alta Vista, and you just clunkily type something in and it would bring you back an indexed result. And there were people at the time saying that, you could never make any money with search. All it is a card catalog. And then this company called Google comes along, and someone said, you should invest in that. And I was like, nah, that's not going to be anything. Facebook's just not going to be anything. They don't even have ads on Facebook. How are they going to make any money? So we watched the foundation set by Bill Gates and the people at Microsoft change the ecosystem of the whole world. For a while, there was this thought that Microsoft was going to own the internet and needed to be broken up. Nothing could be further from the truth. The internet is so competitive now that, and remember when it was all about the browser?
Oh yeah, I was there. I was there for the browser wars.
Okay. And were you choking off people's air supply while you were also helping the handicapped?
I'll put it to you this way. Let me give you a mindset of Microsoft at the time.
Sure.
Now,
all right. Tell me about that, because you know the inside.
The browser wars really heated up. And for those of you who don't know, December 7th of all dates of 1995, Bill Gates made the company stop on a dime and say, we will devote everything we do to the internet. That is the way. We call it the Internet Day, and everything from that point forward, everything's got to have internet component. Okay. So we got a browser. We bought it from some Seattle company, and we made it our own. We called it Internet Explorer, and we had to iterate. Now the Netscape and the Netscape Navigator browser, which everyone just called Netscape, was out there. And that was our competition. So we were going to do everything we can do to kill the competition. And how we did that is we integrate our internet stuff into everything else we do. Word's got to have an internet component. Excel's got to have an internet component. Everything we did, Windows got to have all that. And we did. We did exactly that. I remember we had a poster or some sign on one of the hallways that had a quote from Mark Andreessen, who was the wonder kid of the wonderkin of Netscape.
Yeah.
And he said, "We will make Windows irrelevant." And that was a quote that he gave at some conference. And that's like, you're insulting my mother now. And so that was like them fighting words. So when you hear the stories of like Gates saying, we will stomp on their throat and cut off their air supply, that's kind of the mindset we had. Did we think we were doing anything illegal? No. From a legality standpoint, I can understand why people did it. I'll say this. In 2001, my email was confiscated. It was held, a legality hold, and was combed through by the Department of Justice. And there was an email exchange between me and the vice president of the browser group. And I was asking for some features to be put into Internet Explorer to help people with who were deaf with closed captioning, stuff like that. And he goes, "Oh, these are great things. I'm really glad you're working on it. But you know what? That's an operating system function. We're not part of the operating system. We're just an app." And that fed right into the other side of the story. And so they used that email as evidence of the Internet Explorer truly was just something that was separate and could be separated out, which Microsoft didn't want to do. And so that was bad timing for me, or for the person who wrote that to me.
That piques my interest and makes me want to ask a question, because it's so funny. Every time something new is invented, you can go back and see that the same thing has happened before in a slightly different ecosystem. The more things change, the more they stay the same. So when Microsoft really crushed Apple by the way. Apple had the graphic user interface first, and Apple was easy to use and friendly and all of that. When Microsoft crushed Apple, it's because they opened their platform to application developers, right?
Well, and see, the thing Apple got wrong, and I'm a student of computing history and particularly personal computing history. Apple definitely was to the forefront of making computers easy to use. However, they had the old notion, and it is an old notion, that you do that through hardware. They wanted to sell the hardware because that's where the profit was for them. And that
a walled garden. They wanted to own the whole farm.
They wanted to own the whole thing. And so their first computer was the Apple Lisa. It was a $10,000 machine. Nobody bought it. It's like, it doesn't matter how easy to use. I'm not spending 10 grand on something that I can get for about $1,500, and it takes a little longer for the guy to figure out how to use it. And so that failed. And so Steve Jobs says, oh, well, we screwed that up. We did it all wrong. And he took his little band of developers, and they were pirates. They called them the Pirates. And he actually went off to a different building on the campus, and they came up with the Macintosh. And so much cheaper, but still way too expensive, $2,500. And so again, neat, cute, had great ads. Everyone liked it, used it, but they weren't buying it. I remember growing up, only the rich kids had Apple computers. I was stuck with a TRS-80. I mean, I was so poor, I had to build my own computer. In fact, right over there is a TRS-80 color computer from the 80s, early 80s. That was my.
Can you play tic-tac-toe on it? I
wrote a tic-tac-toe game. I wrote a snake game. I wrote all sorts of stuff on these. And
so part of Apple's thing was they went for the high end, but isn't also part of it that when the two operating systems really started competing, there were more applications written for Microsoft.
I did forget to mention your point is it was a completely open platform. And that is both one of the strengths and one of the weaknesses of Windows is that you can extend it out the wazoo. You can do just about anything with it, which meant that you could do all sorts of bad things. So it became very easy to crash Windows with a bad extension.
It would be great if you could someday work for a Malwarebytes virus company to prevent viruses from attacking that very same computer that has those weaknesses.
Thank you, Windows, for allowing me to have a job now.
Yeah, leaky Windows.
Exactly, leaky Windows.
But to bring the app point home, just to get to the point of that, when Steve Jobs came back to Apple, and I swear to God, he had the same conversation that you guys had about Netscape. He probably sat down and said, we're going to make the desktop computer irrelevant by making your phone the computer. And we're going to put these things on the phone that anybody can write. We can't call them applications because that's what Microsoft did. Let's just call them apps. So they're software tools, right? Isn't that what any app is?
Yeah, absolutely. And remember, the genius of those days was they had the iPod, and it was 99-cent songs. Any song you want, 99 cents. Boom. We will make record stores irrelevant. And so when the iPhone came along, for one, people like me poo-pooed it. We go, oh, come on, a software keyboard on the screen? No one's ever going to use that.
Well, you had your boat, you had your plane, you had your parties with the high-class cocaine use at night, and you were living large on the town. And here comes along this. I'm sorry.
We had our BlackBerry phones.
That's a dramatization. Yes, right. It was the BlackBerry. Yeah.
Yeah, we had the BlackBerry phones with the little hardware buttons and the thumb masters, and we saw this iPhone with this on-screen keyboard, and we go, no, that's going to use up too much screen real estate. That's garbage. And but no, they got it right in that. And that was the key. They combined something that Microsoft never did well in the phone space, or the mobile space, was saying, hey, we've got to make sure our store, the stuff that people get, is really there. It's not enough. It wasn't enough to copy what we did with Windows. It just never materialized. And Google, it was good for two people, wasn't good for three. And I loved Windows Phone. I was one of the last diehards on Windows Phone, and I went to Google for a while, and now I'm a Mac diehard guy.
Oh, you guys have no idea. You have no
14
idea.
Pro Max. I'm telling you.
13. I'm skipping over 14 to the waiting.
That's big because you were such a homie for so long. All right, let's fast forward the story a little bit. It's great background into the world you live in, and now you actually are still helping people to stay safe and secure. when AI hit the public consciousness, which I really think has only been in the last couple of months, I believe there was a big announcement by Microsoft that Bing was going to use, is it ChatGPT or
Yep.
GPT? And they actually said, this is going to make Google irrelevant, not in those exact words.
It's not the exact words, but that's absolutely
exactly
the
right.
intent.
Big words from Bing.
Bing always strikes me as kind of like a mafia term.
Yeah.
Hey, Bing.
Hey, hold on. I'm going to introduce you to my buddy Bing. Bada bing, bada boom.
And Bing was Microsoft's answer to Google, which was really an as good and in some ways better search engine, but Google already had massive mind share and market share. And Google is maybe one of the most profitable, successful companies in the history of the world. I think it's safe
become
to
like
say.
Kleenex. It's because you don't search anything anymore. You Google it.
Right.
It's
So
become
what
a
would you
verb.
say Google's business is?
What would I say it is?
Yeah, well, give me a classification. Google is a what company?
Oh, it's a salesman. That's what it is. It's a sales force.
It's an advertising platform.
Yes.
That's how they make their money. And
we are the product.
Exactly.
It's
You
a
are
data.
the product.
It's a data mining, selling the data product. So when you say sales platform, an ad platform, the ads are unlike any other ads in any other kind of media, because there is so much information about where your ad is going that it can be targeted to an accuracy, a pinpoint accuracy that no one else can do, which gives them their advantage, right?
Yep. And every tech company that's what they're for, is how do we target people? And that Facebook, Instagram, they know where you are, what you like.
Are they kind of all in the data targeting business now?
Absolutely.
I mean, yeah.
That's the only company that's going to be making money. There's
Metadata
lots
is
of
where the
interesting
money
stuff,
is. Yeah.
But that's where the money's at, is being able to deliver something to.
So a good setup. So along comes, and I'm just going to give you my gut feeling about it. You tell me if I'm close. Along comes the equivalent of comparing a candle to a nuclear reactor. That's how I feel artificial intelligence is, because and tell me if I've got this right. I've been listening a bunch and I feel almost ready to have this conversation with you, but maybe not. Artificial intelligence can basically crawl, because it exists on the internet now, just about the entire sum of human knowledge and data in many ways. And it can do it at lightning speed and essentially create what we used to see in Star Trek. And we're going to get Trekkie. I'm sorry, Zip, if you feel sleepy, get a cup of coffee.
Yes, all right.
But in Star Trek, when the captain talks to the computer, he's talking.
I got the captain right here, by the way.
There he is, right there. That's the original captain.
That is the only one to me.
James T. Kirk. Yeah.
No, there's only one real captain. Let's be honest. Don't try and steal my thunder. Can't be done.
So is that a fair analogy? Okay. So, and by the way, what you heard, and this is how weird things hit you in the media, you'll hear about something and you don't really understand the ramifications of it, but you hear that AI is going to disrupt every business, is going to change everything. And then the next thing you see is people are telling AI to write stories about themselves or their friends. You did a really fun one in the email. And it's, so at first, it just seems like a novelty.
Yeah.
And so I don't think most people have a real clue yet what is about to happen. It's like comparing a shovel to a bulldozer, isn't it? Okay.
A very smart bulldozer that knows exactly where to dig.
Right. A bulldozer that you could say, I'm building a house here tomorrow. Please get everything ready, including the foundation. And then you come back the next day and you start stick building the house with a different robot who will stick build the house for you while you go have a donut and a cup of coffee.
But ultimately it's just another computer algorithm. Yes, we say artificial intelligence, and that implies maybe it's a little too smart, or that it's going to eventually say, I'm done with humans. I don't need them anymore. It's not like that. It's still just another program that knows how to consume information and learn from it. And yes, I can imagine a science fiction future that it's like, oh, well, hold it. It's learning the wrong things and it's coming to the wrong conclusions, but we're not there yet. We're nowhere near there.
All right, let me challenge you. Let me push back a little on that, because actually a lot of smart people I know are saying what you're saying. Like, it's not going to replace humans. It's not going to become the Borg. But if there was a human being who wanted to be the Borg
nefarious
queen or the Borg king who ran this kind of technology, it is certainly possible to be used for undescribable evil.
Well, I mean, Elon Musk is a big investor in OpenAI.
Yes.
Yeah, that is it, because there you can introduce biases. And that
So explain that term.
He wants to make a digital god.
Well, but biases, and say, okay, we've all had this, I know you guys talk politics frequently and stuff. And if there's, a faction of the political spectrum that is convinced that tech companies are biased against them. And that these companies are suppressing stories from a particular political angle. And the potential for bias can happen in AI, because you're targeting the wrong data sets to go start combing through or anything like that. Or maybe, let's see, the National Review website doesn't make its stuff available to be perused. Okay, so that's a gap. And that, whereas, I don't know, name some big left-wing site, Daily Beast, shall we say, oh yeah, sure, go have all of our stuff. And so then it learns one side, and that it doesn't really have a balance and doesn't know how to correct the balance, just like a human who only watches one network or reads one source.
None of us know any of those kinds of humans, do we?
And that's the problem right now is making sure that there isn't biases in there. And there's a lot of ethics coming into AI that says, well, how do we make sure that happens? Should there be regulation for that? And sure, there probably should be, but nobody knows well enough to be able to do it. I mean, nobody can regulate social media yet, and that's been around for 20 odd years. So, so, AI is going to be great. And I like to think of this: you're flying across the country, and then you're in this incredibly technologically advanced airplane, and there are two pilots in the front. And in the 80s and 70s and before, there were three pilots, and in the 50s, 40s, there were four people up there, a navigator, an engineer, co-pilot, and pilot. And now we're down to just two. But I'm here to tell you, speaking from an aviation background, they don't need the two pilots.
Right.
And that the automation in there is probably sufficient just for enough for one pilot. And there's a good reason why there's two. Does anyone want to take a guess as to why?
We have a heartbeat, which is not guaranteed.
Right.
Exactly. And that it's just for the human redundancy in case, and every day there's pilot incapacitation, things like that. And so
it's why I had a second MacBook on stage when I was using computers to play sounds in my heart by heart band.
Yeah.
If this computer goes down, I have nothing.
So even though the automation, the ability, the technology is there to perfectly take off that plane, land it, and taxi it off into a particular gate exists, you still have to have humans there, because there's no way people would fly on a plane that doesn't have that.
There's also a branding issue, I think, with artificial intelligence, because the root word of artificial is artifice, which means fake.
Yeah.
And
that's a great point.
Yeah, it's not real. It's just that it's data and it's algorithms.
All right. I am heartened.
It's only here. Excuse me, Bob.
Garbage in,
we have
garbage
a term in computers. It's called garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah.
And that if you shovel the wrong things in, you're going to get the wrong things out, and you're going to get them out a lot faster.
Right.
And so it's going to be a long period of time. And I like to think of it as AI right now is helpful. And that if I write articles for, let's say, ESPN, it can help me write articles way faster. I can write much more of them, maybe of lower quality, but I'm going to do a lot more of it. And what do we think? Does ESPN want higher quality or more output? More output means more ads. They're going to accept a lower quality.
Right.
And that's one of the trends that I dislike. And so now I have a tool. Now the next step is, a co-pilot, someone who sits alongside me, can do the same things and is there for when I need them to do it for me. And then eventually I'm the co-pilot monitoring that. And we're decades away from that. And then, of course, after that is, we're not needed at all.
Okay. So I'm heartened by your optimism, Chuck. And I agree that humans have something special. We have something, you call it a soul, you call it a ability to be kind, and you call it the ability to think from the gut and be creative. A computer program cannot be creative yet. Some people say that could be programmed. I don't see any evidence of it yet. But here's something, and oh, you sent a very nice. You wrote, "Hey AI, can you write a superhero story about Charles Opperman?" And that's all you gave it for direction?
That's it.
That's it. And so at this point, that AI spider crawls all over the web to learn everything it can about you, and then takes what it knows about superhero stories and writes a story about you. And it's a pretty good story.
Another Marvel franchise? Come on. I can't take it anymore.
Did you ever wonder why they're doing so many of them? Because it's so easy to write.
It's so easy. And here's the question. The stories, now that this has been a novelty and been done a bunch of times, it starts to get boring, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's,
For example, and they make mistakes. You wrote, "Hey, how funny is Bob Rivers?" And it wrote, "Bob Rivers is a funny guy who will make you smile with his musical comedy. You can listen to his podcast, watch his books, browse his merchandise on his website at bobrivers.com. So far, I'm okay with this.
Or talk to Lisa.
You can also tune into his radio show on KJR-FM in Seattle."
Yeah. And that's because GPT-3 was cut off at the end of, I think, November 2021. So that was the limit of its knowledge. It's not like it's constantly updating.
But I quit in 2014. It also gave you a superhero name, by the way. His superhero name is Cyberbite.
Yeah, I love that. That was hilarious.
I did too. Became one of the most popular and respected superheroes in the world, was admired for his courage, intelligence, and generosity, which you have.
Thank you.
That's your actual character, not the wacky guy in the movie. He also had a sense of humor and a passion for user-centric design, tried to make his products easy to use and accessible to all people, which means that it read about the kinds of features you were putting in Windows 95 and made it part of your story. Yeah. Pretty crazy. So, okay, that's good. But you know me, I like to exaggerate far beyond what we already see. And I've also heard some other great dramatic exaggerations about what AI can do. Some of what I've heard is that it can code software and take, say, for example, you wanted to compete with a company that it would take several hundred millions of dollars to build the software to compete with. It could be a Bitcoin company, it could be a banking company, those kinds of things. Very high pro apps for the business community, big money stuff. It basically said that one of the shows I heard said that this can now be done on a shoestring with just a few programmers if they're really smart. They don't need all the manpower with AI. Are you familiar with that? Does that affect your business?
Yeah. Listen, when I was in the the aughts, as they say, the 2000s, 2000s, we used to say, "Oh, I learned to program before there was Google," and now people are saying, "Oh, I learned to develop before AI," and that. And so I think of it this way, Bob. You've been a morning show host. You guys know radio, and you could sit there and say, "Hey, write me an opening for tomorrow's show." Where I'm going to have, Jon Stewart as a guest, and it'll come back with, paragraph stuff that, if you run through a voice synthesizer, it'll speak in a relatively normal human sounding way, but you'll notice all these little things. And,
yes. We're nowhere there. Yeah.
And nowhere near there. And so that's the rub, and same with software development.
But because it learns so quick and is developing so quick, maybe in a period of time, months, maybe a year or two, I could say in this podcast, make our podcast into a science fiction movie where the Borg drops in this window behind me, attaches its electrodes to me, and starts making me speak about how I'm going to take over the universe. And
dear, whatever shall we do?
or Dr. Smith. Actually, Dr. Smith is near and dear to my heart.
Warning.
I mean, I don't see the argument that and also I love music. There's things I'd love to do musically now, but I don't have the skills. And, along with music came sampling at one point, along with music came sequencers and all of these artificial plugins that can make stuff and voice correction and all of those things. And now almost anybody can make music, but they can't make great music unless they have inspiration, unless they have a
808
story to
cannot
tell.
do Zip's chops.
Yes. Well, Zip. I remember the first time I replaced him with a drum machine about 35 years ago. I got quite a scowl.
A long time ago, there was a programming language Bill Gates introduced. It was called Visual Basic, and it was like, and one of the claims of fame to this particular computing language was anybody could write software, anyone could write programs, and that because it was the basic computer language, and using the Microsoft Visual, the user interface was just so easy. Well, that's what happened. Anyone did start to write software, and companies are full of crap software now that they're having to deal with for years and years. And it was a good tool. It did bootstrap.
Could that be analogous to the music business, where anyone can write music now, and that's why the classic rock is still the most licensed music, and there's very little good pop music? Okay.
And AI is only going to build on what is already there, so AI will never come up with the next great thing.
Okay. The last dramatic point I want to make, because I think it's a good one, good for society, which I know all of you are supportive of, is this. The big money, the Wall Street money, the billionaires who are venture capital investors say that we are in such a world of hurt now as a civilization, not just the United States, but all over the world, because everywhere in the world printed money and ran up debt. And just the service on the debt that exists, not just in the United States, but everywhere, makes it unpayable and is crippling to our ability to be civilization and society. Because when politics happens, certain campaigns want to favor big business, and other campaigns want to favor, everyone wants to give stuff to the voters. And there really isn't, we've created this huge debt. And historically, there's a couple ways to get out of debt. One is inflation. Duh, that's what we're doing right now. The inflation is causing the value of, decades-old debt to diminish in terms of real, actual what it really is. But the other way is and this is where tech, I believe, has fueled most of my lifetime. The other way is to innovate the F out of it and to create efficiency. So these are the proponents of AI. This is what they're saying, that AI will create such efficiency at disruption, new business models, more productivity, that it actually may be the answers that society needs, still leaving questions, second order effects, like what are all the people who, are displaced by AI are going to do? Well, the positive way of looking at that is those people's minds are going to be freed up to actually be more human. Do you buy that?
Yeah, I do, to an extent, and that. So I can imagine, let's say I'm a writer, and that AI is going to let me write a lot more. I can be the next James Patterson.
And it's going to make your shit look better because of the shit that AI wrote for you earlier, which is okay. It's good superhero name, but it's not going to replace Captain Marvel.
But again, is it going to be an issue of quality or quantity? And unfortunately, business funds quantity, and and with the hope of quality will come later. And that might be the case, and I'm hopeful for it.
Well, Chuck, Dr. Anthony Fauci, perhaps you've seen me. We came up with a vaccine in record time, strictly because so many people concentrated on it at a simultaneous moment that we came up with it quickly for COVID. Whereas people said, oh, polio took 20 years, but we did it fast. Will AI find a cure for cancer by doing the same thing without hiring all these schmucks?
So that's a great point, because everything that has been known about cancer has been fed into neural networks for decades now, and we haven't yet come up with it. I don't expect AI to magically do that. Now, it may advance it eventually, but we're not there yet. We're simply not there yet. We hold that hope. We've been doing weather prediction using neural networks for decades now. And okay, it's way advanced, more advanced than we thought it would be, but it's still by no means perfect.
Not perfect.
But with AI, they can now tell you how deep the flood is going to be, whether it's going to be to the second step, the fourth step, your living room, your attic, or if you're going to have a waterfront in Orange County.
And then you get some guy who puts up a map and draws a new, where it's going to go. It's going to hit Alabama and not Florida.
Well, it's a different color Sharpie that he used, but he was an idiot.
You're a Floridian and you're wearing a red shirt, so I'm very surprised at that.
Yeah, good point. But I have an AI demo I would like to do for you guys. And this relates back to my company. And we use my phone. I've got a picture of Bob and I here from a few years ago. And I'm just going to take a picture of it with my phone here. And it's scanning the picture. And this is an app that my company developed. And then it writes a bit of text for it. And I'll read it off. Looks like these two could hack into your heart and steal all your affection. Better watch out for those charming smiles and sneaky tech skills. That's based off of this picture.
Can you airdrop me that, please?
And so you can get it yourself. This is you go on the App Store. There's a World Bytes, WORLD BYTES, and we developed this app as an April Fool's joke last month, or back in March. And here's all it does: it takes a picture from your camera, it sends it up to a Microsoft service that analyzes the picture, and it probably comes back and says, two white middle-aged men, with TikTok or whatever the thing is behind us. And then we took that text and we sent it over to ChatGPT and said, write a cybersecurity story about this text. And that's it. That was the extent of the programming. Take a picture, classify it, write a story. And that we did very little actual programming. And it's a lot of fun. It's so much fun to just take various pictures of things and see what kind of cute things it comes up with, but it's a novelty. It's nothing. This isn't replacing anyone.
Not earth-shattering. Interesting. You were somewhat more demure about AI than I expected. For a Star Trek person, for a person who could boldly go where no man has gone before for 5 years.
Where did he get those headphones?
Yeah.
But hey, let's take the lesson of one of the best Star Trek episodes ever, The Ultimate Computer. I'll just go through this quickly. The Ultimate Computer is going to replace the entire, and this is from the 1960s. This was in 1967. A really great episode of Star Trek from the second season. It's they've installed this computer and it knows how to run starships. Humans won't be needed. And the scientist who's come up with it, it's his last gasp at greatness, but it's a little too good. And it does great. But unfortunately, because it has all of his biases built into it, it says, oh, well, you know what? If I get attacked, it doesn't matter what, I'm going to attack back. And as part of war games exercises, it goes ahead and starts attacking the other ships. And they go ahead and the Starfleet comes back and says, okay, well, we got to blow up the Enterprise, because they don't even think it's the computer. They think it's Kirk has gone mad and is trying to wreck everything. And so by this point, they're able to disconnect the computer and they don't know what to do. Do they defend themselves? Do they try to attack? And Kirk says, no, we're shut off everything, lower our shields. We're not playing dead, but we're going to be unprotected. And the commander of the opposing force goes, this could be a trap, but I'm going to wait. And they're going to try to figure out how to communicate. And the closing line of the episode is, it's like, Kirk, why did you do that? That should not have worked. That could have been like a trap that the computer would have set. And he says, no, but I gambled on the other guy's humanity. I gambled on his empathy.
I also read what Gene Roddenberry told me to say.
Yes, that is how it was written.
Yeah.
But even back then they were thinking about these things and the potential to replace people. And it's like a computer can never think like a human, can never be empathetic. It could help and be helpful to the point of where a human isn't needed for that particular job. But humans are going to be needed to come up with the information, to provide the groundwork, and to refine what the computers come up with. Okay. So that's how I think of it.
By the way,
perhaps to know when to turn an elderly person over so they don't get bed sores, for example.
Yeah, or just or even just to feed in a set of disparse symptoms, and to say, you know what. And this is something John Medina, I know, is a good friend of ours. But I was talking to the cancer version of John Medina down here in Florida, and they were talking about how there's all this research on these particular medications and these particular doses help with this kind of cancer, but not always. What are the conditions like this particular person has? They're white, they're at this age, all this data set. Genetics. And they feed that all in and they go, oh, hey, you might be a candidate for this mixture. And that it didn't work on this person, but it might work on you. And that's how they're using AI for that beneficial thing.
And that's very, very hopeful and a super useful tool. I think you put a cap on it with the Star Trek story.
And, all boils down to that for me.
Although I sense you're not so much a Next Generation Data fan. No.
This week on Next Generation, Data gets emotions.
Make its own number one, AI.
So that's fascinating because I'm more into the whole emotions of Data thing. I'm watching the current Picards actually, and they're using,
which is excellent.
Yeah, they're using quotes from The Art of War that are pretty amazing. So, all right, a lightning round for anybody with a quick question. Zip, you've been pestering us all night. What have you got?
I have, I've been pestering you. Charles, speak a little bit to the dangers of social media and the effect on mental health and algorithms and viral mobs.
I'll just give an example from tonight. So my son's 8th grade, graduation. So these are all 13, 14, 15-year-olds, in that range, mostly 14-year-olds. And my son goes up to a girl who's an absolute stunning woman, and that just tan, long-legged, just beautiful in this beautiful dress.
Ship off the old block.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, dang. And Anthea, my son's mother, she says, I don't think my mother would have ever let me out of the house look like that. And it's like, that was, and that's the danger of social media that makes people feel like that's the way they got to look, that they've got to fit into these particular molds. And if you're not that way, you don't have any worth. And that, now I'm not saying social media says that, I'm saying that's implied and inferred.
Wasn't that also the same danger of being a hippie at Woodstock though, when you boil right down to it? I mean, didn't our parents say the same thing about people bathing naked in the rain?
Yeah, but my brother was at Woodstock, my half brother Robert, and I love hearing those stories from him. And that to me, that social media has great power to keep people connected. Like I can stay in touch with you and Lisa and your kids
without driving and leaving your car and abandoning it and going to Yasgur's farm. Yes.
Let me make a terrible radio analogy. Orson Welles, War of the Worlds, and if people don't have decent critical thinking and they flip a computer on and there's somebody with a nefarious bent to them, how do you protect against that?
You can't. Education's the only thing. I mean, really, it truly is the only thing. And right now, the truth is under attack. Reliable sources of information. And that, I can sit there. I subscribe to the Wall Street Journal. I subscribe to the Washington Post. I subscribe to the New York Times. All of these are very reputable journalistic outlets. And that, yes, of course, they all have biases.
I'll have spin. Yeah.
And that if they have a mistake,
cater to their customers, by the way. Yes.
Yes, of course, like all media. But generally, if they say something, it's the truth. And that if I say something that's like, what, I looked into that. That's not true. They'll say, oh, I don't care what you're reading. I only care about what I'm reading. And that to me is the most dangerous thing. It's like, sure, And that if I just have my bubble and this is what I believe, then, I have my reality, and then it all becomes confirmation bias. Whenever I get a piece of data that confirms what I'm thinking, it's like, oh yeah, obviously, of course.
I believe that. Yeah.
And,
Chuck, I put in the question to ChatGPT how to balance that media narrative thing, and it said, kill Rupert Murdoch.
Well, is there any let's call it what it is, late stage capitalism? Is there any profit motive in being fair and balanced?
No, it's boring.
And that, and until, and so, but of course the opposite is just as dangerous. State-run media or heavily regulated media is just as dangerous. So, until we care enough about something to make it, to be more protective. Like we just had this scare. I don't know if you guys heard about it. Someone created a picture of what looked to be like an explosion outside the Pentagon.
The Pentagon, yeah.
And that very nice. And so everyone, and as your jingle says, the lie gets around the world several times before the truth gets out. People go, "Oh my God, explosion at the Pentagon!" Stock market's dipped.
Stock market crash. Yeah,
that's right.
And so, it's a dangerous thing.
I have a final question for you. It's been a wonderful hour. Chuck Opperman, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a lot of fun.
Oh, thank you. I love being here. You guys make me laugh and you entertain, and I think you're just a great group of people.
Can you teach me Cobalt?
Did you write that, or did ChatGPT write that?
I gotta say that's actually not me. One of the things they did at Microsoft was speech output, and I haven't been talking myself at all. It's just
So you have behind you the one. I now know that there's different dioceses in the religion of Star Trek, because you're the Captain Kirk original. You're an originalist.
Oh, yeah, very much so.
And William Shatner is what? Is he 93 now?
92 at least.
Yeah.
If he was a candidate for president, would you vote for him just because
absolutely.
he's William Shatner? Yeah.
But William Shatner will be the first person to tell you
he
that
can keep his head alive and keep his brain working. It doesn't really matter.
Shut the refrigeration off on Walt and put his in there.
And I want everyone to watch Bob's reaction when I say this.
Okay.
Bob is very much like the actor William Shatner. Because he is an incredibly curious guy. He would much rather ask a question and hear what you have to say than him to talk. And I've got, not the last time I saw you in person, but one of the times I saw you in person up in Vermont is after I was in New York, and I'd spent a few hours with Bill on the set of
his buddy Bill Shatner. Shat, I believe.
Ticonderoga, New York, has got the Star Trek original series set tour. They've recreated all the sets. It's amazing. And Bill goes out there for a weekend, and so I paid some big bucks, and I got to spend some time with the guy. And he doesn't want your questions about this episode or anything like that. He wants to see, hey, I'm thinking about this. What do you think about that? And it was a fascinating few hours. And Bob, you're like that. You want to know what other people are thinking, and then you want to synthesize it all and come up with something and get back. That's what Bill Shatner.
As we're almost out of time, I have two more last questions. Will the replicator ever be built? And the transporter?
No. No, the replicator would happen before the transporter, because the replicator, listen, right now, I wish I replicate food all the time. I throw a few things into the microwave, bzz, and out comes my lunch. And that's
warmed up. Yeah. Interesting. You don't think those are
transporter? Not at all.
Comes to physics, not possible. Right. Interesting. Chuck, you're of course one of my favorite people, and
ask the ultimate authority. Think about you're going to ask.
You are taking the essence and saying, okay, I'm going to hold this in a computer. You're going to hold this person into data storage. Okay, well, and Star Trek has done this trope itself. It's like, okay, well, what if we rematerialize them? I'm just going to keep them in storage for a while. So what are you in that case? So imagine, this is one of the quantum physics challenges. Imagine there's a computer that knows the exact position of every atom in the universe, and it knows its vector state, its direction, and how fast and then you step it forward. Predict, this atom's going to collide with this atom, it's going to exchange protons, neurons, whatnot, and that's what's going to be a result. And so in theory, you could build a computer that once it knows the state of the universe at any given point, it can predict where it's going to be in the future. Everything is known, the no free will thought. And so, that means that there's something more that we're not understanding, but about what it means to be a human, what it means to be a physical object, and that it's more than just atoms being able to be moved through a computer or through some sort of entity. And I'm not big on those kind of things, but I know we're, it's just what we perceive it, and our question is always based on our intelligence at the moment.
Chuck, if you ever want to go together and invest in that computer, let me know.
All right. Chuck Opperman. Thank you very much, Chuck. We're going to play the jingle out. And
I love an Irish
absolutely
brogue.
pleasure talking to you. And if anyone's interested in investing in Keith's movie, I'm sorry, you're too late. 5 people have already bid on it. No problem. All right. Whoops. Oh, hey, Dave, you can go ahead and play that jingle because I'm not sure how to.
They say that a lie can go